Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be taking you through my comparison and review between the two new-gen beasts, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. But here's the thing, for some people it's super easy to choose, but for others it's actually a tough decision. You've got issues simply getting a hold of a system, you might have an issue actually choosing which one to go for, or maybe they're actually so close you simply just can't decide between the two and which to spend your hard-earned cash. This isn't a console war either. What's good for you won't be the same for somebody else, so just keep that in mind, but definitely stick around till the end. I'll be showing you how I easily got a hold of both of these consoles at retail cost. So for my day job, I work in finance, and I have to make hundreds of decisions daily, and honestly, sometimes it just comes down to putting a list on a piece of paper, so keep working, put your kids to bed, grab a drink, and let's dive in. Alright, so diving right in, these two systems couldn't be more different from each other when it comes to design and aesthetics, and honestly, for some people, even the design is a make or break for the decision. I myself place a lot of value in simplicity and a degree of minimalism. The Xbox is a non-invasive box. It really and truly can fit anywhere. On a TV setup, on a bookshelf, on a desk, it simply fits. And it looks really damn good. The neon green is a nice hint of color, but nothing wild. The PlayStation 5, however, really does look like a new-gen gaming console. The popped collar really adds a flair to the aesthetic, and I still think it looks badass, but personally, I'm still going to be toning this down a bit with some D-brand dark plates and a leather skin very soon. Again, it's not that I don't like how it looks, I just personally want to tone it down just a little bit. I will mention as well, the size is massive. The PlayStation 5 is approaching mini gaming PC status in size, so that's definitely a consideration. For me, this one has to go to the Xbox Series X. I appreciate the minimal design and the smaller size. For me, it just fits my office better, my living room better, so it takes the cake on this one. Now let's move over to the controller, and let me make this entirely clear. The only problem with the Xbox controller is that the PlayStation 5's DualSense exists. DualSense absolutely slaps. For me, this is an absolute non-contest. The Xbox controller is phenomenal, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely incredible, and the PlayStation 5 controller is just leaps ahead of that. I will say that what I love about the Xbox controller is that it does have offset sticks. I don't know why, I've just always sort of preferred this, even going back to the original Xbox from 20 years ago, but both controllers have this micro grippiness to it. The Xbox has these tiny dots to help with grip on both the back end and the triggers. And mind you, it's very noticeable coming from the generation before, which barely had any. And the PlayStation 5, again, one-upping Xbox, has these mini PlayStation emblems, which adds an incredible level of detail that's still functional. Now here's what really gets set apart, and that's the DualSense simply has so much more to offer. It has a built-in microphone to start. While not the best quality, it is there, and it's non-existent on the Xbox controller. This controller has a frickin' speaker. When gaming, there's always a subtle, low-volume accent sound to accompany whatever you're doing in-game, and it's just so badass. This did take me by surprise. When I first hopped into games, I didn't even know where the sound was coming from, and I didn't even know this was a thing. The controller's rumble is absolutely top notch as well. It really gives you a physical experience to accompany the beautiful games. And what really gets me are the adaptive triggers. It turns whatever you're gaming into an entire experience. The drawing of a bow in Horizon, you feel it in hand. The firing of a trigger in Cyberpunk, you feel like you're pulling a trigger. Now, some smaller stuff you can't forget is that both of these controllers do have USB-C ports. However, the PlayStation 5 actually uses this port to charge, as it is rechargeable. You either love it or you hate it. The Xbox controller does have a port primarily plug into other devices. While not rechargeable itself, I do charge up reusable batteries to stay connected. For the controller, this is an easy win for me towards the PlayStation 5 DualSense. The DualSense takes an already great controller and brings a tangible in-hand experience that actually feels next-gen. Alright, so specs on these two machines are relatively the same. Not exactly, but just about. You're really not going to see much difference in terms of the same game performance on either console. I'll just say it off the back, specs for me are one of the most less important considerations, mainly because games look so dang good anyways. Both systems will pull out 4K gaming, both systems will have a great list of titles that display 120Hz, both have ray tracing and the latest graphical accomplishments. I will mention there is a bit of a barrier here if you're really trying to enjoy 4K 120Hz, and that's actually having access to an HDMI 2.1 display, which can be super pricey. I did do a recent review on the TCL R646, which is a budget option. I'll leave the link to that video in the description or click above, but if you didn't already know, you'll definitely need a 4K 2.1 HDMI display for the full experience. I've got both PlayStation 5 and Xbox hooked up through this HDMI 2.1 splitter from Milano, and I will be reviewing that in a future video. I think the main difference will come from what developers can do with the hardware down the road. That being said, the PlayStation 5 didn't have variable refresh rate at launch, but it does now, so furthermore they are really close. Despite the similarities, I actually still pick the PlayStation 5, and here's why. Both systems are priced at $500. They both have a cheaper alternative. The PlayStation 5 has the digital-only version at $400. The comparable Xbox alternative would be the Xbox Series S at $300. And while the Series S is a little tightened, it simply won't put out the same power as the PS5 digital version. So this round for me does go to the PlayStation 5. Having a cheaper option with the same gaming output is a pretty good reason to pick a PS5, especially if you don't care for the disc drive. Okay, as mentioned, this entire thing comes down to opinion and preference, and I think this one really matters, and that's the console's operating system and UI. For me, I'm absolutely divided on these two. The Xbox Series X is actually pretty intuitive, but I feel like it's kind of lacking. It's just about the same as the previous generation, just like what I have here on my Xbox One S, but they haven't really changed much. It is fine, but I do wish it had more character, more customization perhaps, or larger dashboard elements for games like the PlayStation 5 has. I will mention too, I have had some system issues on my Xbox Series X, whereas I haven't had a single issue on my PlayStation 5. My Series X unfortunately does dip down to like 5 FPS sometimes after booting up, despite having all settings set to 4K 120Hz. I'm unsure what's causing the issue, but it happens every third boot or so. I always have to swap to 60Hz and back to 120Hz to fix. And once in a while, I'll get the odd game crash from Call of Duty or Halo Infinite. Outside of that, the UI experience is still super functional, with everything being available in 1 to 2 clicks. And for me personally, the PlayStation 5 UI feels very refreshing. The settings are rather simplified. Whether that's good or bad, that's definitely up to you, but I really appreciate the 4K dashboard with the massive game graphical interface when a game is ready to go. The music queuing up is just a nice touch as well. It kind of reminds me of a DVD menu that's super freaking loud at 3 a.m. that wakes you up after falling asleep. I don't know, I kind of just like it, and as mentioned, I haven't encountered a single error, crash game, or any other issue with my PS5 software. This one does go to the PS5 for me. The refined UI and simplified dashboard just does it for me. Now let's talk game titles, because for some people, the system exclusives are sometimes the reason people buy a system in the first place. And really, that's the reason exclusives exist, really. And while it depends what sort of games you really enjoy, here's my take. Starting with Xbox, for me, the biggest exclusives I've enjoyed have been Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5. There's definitely other learning titles like Sea of Thieves or Gears of War, but Halo for me was an absolute hit. Nostalgic how the multiplayer is played and brought me right back to Xbox 360 days. With that though, I can't say I'd really go out of my way to buy the Xbox just for any of those games. On the PlayStation 5 end, however, I feel like their exclusives are just way more refined. I find they're less dependent on online play and more focused on story-driven games like God of War, Forbidden West, and Spider-Man. These games feel like playable movies really, so for me where I'm at, being an exhausted dad by 9 p.m, throwing on a playable movie like Forbidden West or even a PS4 title like Detroit Become Human is just so relaxing. Again, this is absolutely all preference, but this goes to PlayStation for me. An in-depth, refined single-player game played at your own pace really gives it the edge in my world. Although I will say Xbox exclusives on PC is a total win for gamers in general who might not have access to an Xbox. But does that really mean it's still an exclusive? I'll let you decide. Anyways, on to subscription services, and I gotta say, similar to PlayStation's DualSense controller, Microsoft's Game Pass absolutely slaps. For me, this absolutely dunks on PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus. Yes, I'm aware they're being combined, but they're late to the show on this one, and Game Pass is just so far ahead. I will still be trying out PS Now once it is combined and launched in June, but as of now, Game Pass is available and it's been out. As well, I kind of feel like an old guy here, but honestly, the future is now with cloud gaming. The fact that you can just demo any game at any time with no install is absolutely wild. Not to mention the catalog is just so extensive. There's zero chance I would ever get through so many games before new ones are even added. And furthermore, it's badass that you have access to day one launches. Day one, I was playing Forza Horizon 5, and day one, I was playing Halo Infinite. Plus, game discovery is just so easy with such an extensive library alongside cloud gaming. PlayStation Now and Plus do have some pretty sweet titles, but I'm not sure it's enough to carry the service. I am super stoked to play God of War, and I'm hoping Crash Bandicoot is like the first 3 installments. Hopefully, launch on the new service will be smooth. Overall, the winner on this one's going to have to be Xbox's Game Pass. So let's take a dive out of gaming for just a sec, because that's not all these systems do. They do other things, and they do them really well. Let's talk apps. I'll say for the most part, they obviously have all the popular apps like Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime, and so on. And of course, if you're rocking a TV with HDMI 2.1, chances are that TV has all that stuff built in anyways, but for comparison's sake, we'll keep it between the consoles. When you step outside of the popular apps, Xbox actually has so many more apps, honestly. Now, I haven't tried them all, but it could be a quantity over quality scenario, I'm not too sure. PS5, as with Xbox, really do cover you for whatever you need, but hate me for it, I do choose PS5 literally because they have a native Apple Music app, and that makes me happy. Most people use Spotify, I get it, and that's available on both systems, but for myself being an Apple Music user, having an Apple Music app on the PlayStation 5 definitely wins it for me here. But let's talk about PlayStation and Xbox's mobile applications. And I gotta be honest, I'm kind of old school when it comes to these apps. Consoles haven't really had these over the last 20 years, and up until recently, I've been a PC gamer. I simply haven't adapted to using these apps much up until making this video. These apps are great tools. They allow you to access the game stores to purchase games. They allow you to review, download, and share your game captures and screenshots. Simple as it is, it blows my mind for the present day sharing capabilities. Both apps do allow you to seamlessly hop into party chat and voice chats whenever you want as well. And I must have been living under a rock because I just found out that both of these systems have released remote play through their applications. And this is absolutely wild. I'm sure lots of you won't use it, but for me, this new discovery changes everything. And to be honest, whenever my 16-month-old daughter is hogging the big screen watching the Wiggles on a Saturday morning, I can bust out my iPad and controller and play my Xbox or PlayStation 5. And honestly, that's freaking priceless. As long as your system is on, go ahead and swap the input back to the Wiggles and enjoy your game in small mode. The PlayStation does put remote play on a separate application, which I don't really like, but I do much prefer the feel and the look of the PlayStation application, so this one, for me, goes to the PlayStation 5. And I think the Wiggles agree. Jumping back into gaming, let's just bask in the beauty that is the new generation of gaming. 4K 60Hz is freaking beautiful, and both consoles handle it incredibly well. And while the Xbox has had variable refresh rate from launch, the PS5 has only just received this in a recent update. And with that update brings better performance to a slew of games. However, again, PlayStation is playing a little bit of catch up on that one feature. VRR aside, both systems crush all games. And honestly, as mentioned, if you have a 4K 2.1 HDMI supported display, 4K 120Hz is just bliss. This is the new generation of gaming, and it's pulled me off gaming PCs for the first time in years. While I would mark this one a tie, I personally give it to the Xbox since it did have VRR from launch. Okay, so let's talk about my single most favorite feature on these newer systems, and that's Quick Resume. This was the single most mind-blowing thing that just had me in awe the first time I jumped onto the Xbox Series S. Spoiler, the Xbox takes this one easily, absolute landslide win. Mentioned it before, but I'm a dad and I'm going through some online studies and doing YouTube as a hobbyist. I really don't have time to be waiting around for load screens. I've got 30 minutes tops of energy left in the tank at the end of the day. So to be able to swap and jump and load up whatever game in seconds makes all the difference for me. Compared to the PS5, the Xbox actually takes multiple games and will allow you to seamlessly swap between them at whatever state you left it, meaning you can be mid-frickin' race or campaign and literally swap between the two in just a moment. The exact moment you close your game, it's saved. New gen, futuristic features like this make me see how far things have come on these consoles. And not that it's bad, but the PlayStation 5 will only keep one game and one application open at a time, and unlike the Xbox, it doesn't save your game state always, but rather keeps the game loaded on the system resources and allows you to reopen it super quickly with the power of its SSD. Not quite the same, but still amazing nonetheless, and compared to the previous generations, it's leaps ahead. But again, for me, Xbox does get this one. And talking about the SSDs, I'll keep storage simple really, and as with everything, comes down to your personal preference. The PlayStation 5 has 825 gigs out of box, and the Xbox Series X has 1 terabyte. Now, between the two, they're both fast as hell, and you really shouldn't have any issues. Depending on what you're playing, you might fill it quick or not at all. For me, I've got plenty of storage left available on both. But I'll tell you why PS5 wins this one for me, and that's the user expandability. It's not that you can't expand the Xbox Series X, but you gotta dish out some bucks for a proprietary expansion card that only has that one single use. The PS5, however, allows you to use a compatible SSD, which is definitely the better option. I'm a big fan of user upgradability, so the PS5 comes out on top for me on this one. Alright, so remember I mentioned at the beginning I'd show you how to get one or both of these consoles at retail pricing. Well, here's what I did to get them both. Twitter. That's right, the butthole of the internet, Twitter. Honestly, if you really do want to pick up one of these, even if you've never used Twitter before, like me, just follow some of these stock alert folks and turn on notifications. If you're quick enough with a little bit more patience, you should be able to easily get a hold of one of these systems. My PS5 was from a Costco alert that did come in a bundle, and my Series X was an Amazon alert. It's definitely an easy way if you're quick enough. But if I'm to compare the two, I do feel like the Xbox Series X is easier to come by. So really, if these are tied on your list, if one is easier to get, consider giving it a tick. For me, Amazon Canada has these stocked frequently enough and they don't sell out in 30 seconds. And here comes my last one, and then we'll jump into some final considerations. And that's your overall experience from previous generations. Did you have an Xbox One or maybe a PS4? For me, my last console I actually really played was the Xbox 360. I did have an Xbox One S, but I simply didn't game on it. It didn't quite compete with the gaming PC I had at the time, so I didn't really get much time on it. My familiarity and overall experience has always been on Xbox, so I did give it my check. And let's sum it all up for me. I've got PlayStation 5 at 6 and Xbox at 6. It's tied. And at this point, you really just got to go with what you're feeling, really. Do you have a gaming PC already? Awesome. You have access to all the Xbox exclusives. Maybe consider the PlayStation 5. Maybe Xboxes are available like crazy, but you're indifferent between the two. Better get gaming because you won't regret it. And one big consideration, honestly, and probably the most important one is, where are your friends at? Are they all playing on PlayStation, Xbox? Maybe they've got Game Pass on PC. At that point, you have to just pick one, play where the homies are, because otherwise you're talking yourself out of a good time. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like, sub to support. I'll catch you later. Till next time.